As the woman drove down a deserted highway, she noticed a lone pair of headlights quickly approaching her car from behind. When the car came closer, she noticed that it was going to overtake her. The car drew up beside her, but then the driver suddenly swerved back behind her car. She started getting nervous and kept an eye on the strange car in her rearview mirror. He pulled up dangerously close to her rear bumper and began flashing his high beams at her. The headlights dimmed for a moment, but then the headlights flashed again, and the car behind her surged forward. The car followed her very closely, and on tight curves or over hills, he would flash his high beams on and off. The frightened woman struggled to keep her eyes on the road and fought the urge to keep looking at the car behind her. Finally, she approached her exit, but the car continued to follow, flashing the high beams again and again. The terrified woman took out her mobile phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, the woman screamed into the phone. "A car's following me. He keeps tailgating and blinking his lights at me." The woman gave her address, and in a few minutes, she saw the red and blue lights of a police car in the distance. She breathed a sigh of relief as she pulled into her driveway, but suddenly, the strange car pulled into the driveway behind her and began blinking its lights on and off like a maniac. The police car screeched to a halt on the woman's front lawn, and two officers jumped out with their guns drawn. They pulled the man out of the strange car and forced him to lie face down on the lawn. They then handcuffed him as he screamed, "There's someone in her car! There's someone in her car!" The two policemen suddenly pointed their guns in the woman's direction and fired. The woman screamed, but when she turned around, she saw the bloody corpse of a murderer fall out of her back seat. There was a large butcher knife still clasped in his cold, dead hand. The police searched her back seat and found duct tape, a blindfold, and a pair of handcuffs lying there. The woman realized that the man in the strange car had been trying to save her. When the police released him, he explained that as he pulled up behind the car and his headlights lit up her back seat, he had seen a man with a butcher knife rising up behind her. Just as the madman was about to stab her, he flashed his high beams and the figure crouched back down. "I flashed my high beams every time I saw him raise the knife," he said. Jane wore a yellow ribbon around her neck every day, and I mean every day, rain or shine, whether it matched her outfit or not. It annoyed her best friend Johnny after a while. He was her next-door neighbor and had known Jane since she was 3. When he was young, he had barely noticed the yellow ribbon, but now they were in high school together. It bothered him. "Why do you wear that yellow ribbon around your neck, Jane?" He'd ask her every day, but she wouldn't tell him. He asked her to the soda shop for an ice cream sundae. Then he asked to watch him play in the football game. Then he started seeing her home. And come spring, he asked her to the dance. Jane always said yes when he asked her out, and she always wore a yellow dress to match the ribbon around her neck. It had finally occurred to Johnny that he and Jane were going steady, and he still didn't know why she wore the yellow ribbon around her neck. So he asked her about it yet again, and yet again she did not tell him. "Maybe someday I'll tell you about it," she replied. Someday? That answer annoyed Johnny, but he shrugged it off because Jane was so cute and fun to be with. Well, time flew past, as it was a habit of doing, and one day Johnny proposed to Jane and was accepted. They'd plan a big wedding, and Jane hinted that she might tell him about the yellow ribbon around her neck on their wedding day. But somehow, with the preparations and his beautiful bride and the lovely reception, Johnny never got around to asking Jane about it. And when he did remember, she got a bit teary-eyed and said, "We're so happy together. What difference does it make?" And Johnny decided she was right. Johnny and Jane raised a family of 4 with the usual ups and downs, laughter and tears. When their golden anniversary rolled around, Johnny once again asked Jane about the yellow ribbon around her neck. It was the first time he'd brought it up since the week after the wedding. Whenever their children asked him about it, he'd always hush them, and somehow none of the kids had dared ask their mother. Jane gave Johnny a sad look and said, "Johnny, you've waited this long. You can wait a while longer." And Johnny agreed. It was not until Jane was on her deathbed a year later that Johnny, seeing his last chance slip away, asked Jane one final time about the yellow ribbon she wore around her neck. She shook her head a bit at his persistence and then said with a sad smile, "Okay, Johnny, you can go ahead and untie it." With shaking hands, Johnny fumbled for the knot and untied the yellow ribbon around his wife's neck. Jane's head fell off. There was a little girl who really loved dolls. She had a big collection of them in her bedroom. One day, while she was browsing through a shop on her own, she spotted a really beautiful doll. It would make a perfect addition to her collection. She only hoped she had enough money to buy it. "How much is that doll, ma'am?" she asked the old woman behind the counter. "The doll's not for sale," replied the woman. "But it's so beautiful," said the girl. "I really want it." The old woman became irritated. "I told you it's not for sale," she said. "Why not?" persisted the girl. "Because the doll is cursed." "Well, that's okay. I don't mind. I'm not going to sell it to you, but if you really must have it, go ahead and take it. It's yours. But if something bad happens, don't blame me." "Yes, thank you," said the girl, smiling as she grabbed the doll and walked out of the shop. The little girl was so delighted to get the doll for free that she ran all the way home, carrying it in her arms. When she got home to her apartment building, she went into the lobby. It was deserted. She stood there, waiting for the elevator to arrive. The doors opened, and she stepped inside, clutching her new doll tightly. The doors closed, but the elevator did not move. The little girl got scared and began trembling with fear. "OMG," she thought to herself. "Is this the curse of the doll?" Suddenly, she felt the doll move in her arms. Ever so slowly, its head turned to face her. The little girl wanted to scream, but she couldn't make a sound. The doll's eyelids fluttered and opened. It stared at her with its lifeless glass eyes. Then its mouth opened and it said, "Push the button to go up, bitch." "Hey, I know what you want to do. You want to hit those buttons for me. Just like that."